You're listening to the Fezcast, produced on behalf of the Saracen Supporters Association and featuring the independent thoughts, rants and rambles of Saracens fans and special guests. If you'd like your opinion to be heard on the show, you can find the Fezcast on Facebook or Fezcast_SSA on Instagram and whatever Twitter is known as these days. But for now, enjoy this week's show.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Well, hello everybody and welcome to the next episode of the Fezcast after, at long last, a win for Saracens Men, if nothing else. But I know, good evening Matt, you're joining me. You've already chatted with John about the games on the weekend at StoneX. Fortunately, I never saw any of them because it was Sharon's birthday this weekend, so we were away up in Chester. I caught the internationals when I was allowed to in our hotel room, in between going out for meals and going to see Al Murray and Mel Gedroich in a period comedy, which was hilarious. But yeah, it was quite good to come out of that and to see that we'd put 70-odd points on Nottingham. And Dan Vickers was right in what he said when we chatted to him last week, which was an excellent chat, wasn't it, Matt?
It was very good, yeah. I mean, yeah, I've spoken to John about the game, but it does show that there is a bit of not only a golfing class between the Premiership and the Championship, but actually, we've seen the difference between facing Coventry and facing Nottingham. Just the difference that a little bit more professionalism within the Championship. What a difference that makes. We didn't really get out of third, fourth gear too much. Nottingham, to be fair, through their back scored some quite tidy looking tries. But yeah, it was a training ground game, and me and John were predictably two of not very many more than two people that were there for it as well. But not too bad. But yeah, Dan was quite right in what he was saying. It was a way of getting some minutes in the legs and getting back to winning ways.
I suppose what it does show in it, what we sort of like kind of touched on, is the fact that, look at Saracens, for argument's sake, the amount of players that we've got off in World Cup duty, and we'll talk about that in our last part after you and John have chatted about the games. But when they come back, I don't think there's any surprise that teams like Ealing and Coventry and Jersey, who have been at the top of the Championship for a number of years now, that they can compete with, loath to say weakened teams, but not the first teams of Saracens or Leicester or whoever. And it's when those big players come back that if Ealing would have come up or Jersey or whoever, would they be able to cope with an entire season? One-off games are very much different to an entire season, as we know.
Oh yeah, I think there's no doubt in that if you stick those three sides in the Premiership, they would probably lose the vast majority of games. They might take one scalp or two, potentially, during the internationals. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's giving them some of the opportunity they need to develop. So yeah, we'll talk about it over and over again, really, that the Cup is being played in the right way. But yeah.
Absolutely, and I think and it's got a kind of like it's got a mirror to hold up to the World Cup, where we look at tier 2 nations, which is a horrible thing to say. I mean, these are teams that are at that competition, that they are performing. Even teams like Namibia and Chile, who've taken a thumping over the weekend, they still performed. And, they made France and England work hard for their points. But we'll talk about that in part 3. Let's get on with your chat with John. And I'm interested to hear what you two have got to say about what happened on the weekend. And then we'll come back and, we'll discuss all the big talking points from the World Cup. And I'm going to have some fun, obviously.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Hi, Alex Osterberry here, Director of Rugby for Saracens Women. You're listening to the Saracens Fezcast.
This is the Fezcast.
Yeah, so Jez had a busy weekend, so he's missed all of the club rugby. But myself and John were at the StoneX, certainly for the men's game, and we unfortunately both had to miss the later kick-off for the women's game. But John, how you doing, mate? We haven't seen you so far this season. You good?
Yes, mate. Thank you very much. Yeah, good to be back. I'm shame I couldn't make the first couple this season, but hopefully I'm back and you'll be getting bored of me soon, hopefully.
Always, I like to have a bit of variety in the voices anyway. But we probably should talk about the women's game a little bit. I mean, we'll admit that we both haven't seen the action other than some brief highlights. But starting the season in the cup as the men are against Harlequins and just about losing the match. It looked like a comeback was on at one point towards the end of the game, but just beaten really 29-36. But a few good things to take from that game anyway. It's the same sort of thing as the men really playing a cup team. There's a lot of young players involved and a lot of the new players involved. So just on paper, it still looks like a reasonable run out, doesn't it, John?
Yeah, of course it does. I mean, obviously you'd like to win, but if you can't win, don't get battered, and they didn't. And it was nice to see, actually, as the women were, the players were turning up in dribs and drabs during the men's game, and they was walking past and getting a warm reception from where I was in the North Stand. So yeah, hopefully they enjoyed their hit out on the hallowed turf, and they'll be ready to go again. Bit of rust knocked off, and yeah, up for the next one.
Absolutely, but yeah, a few things to mention from it. We were saying just before we started, really, there's obviously something about the number 2 shirt for Saracens Women. If you're wearing that shirt, you have to score a hatful of tries, and Bryony Field on her debut scored a hat trick. So it looks like she's potentially giving May Campbell a run for her money with the try scoring so far this season. And May herself was playing for the Barbarians over in South Africa for a bit of a warm up for the South Africa down there. But yeah, it's a bit interesting, isn't it? The hooker does seem to score a lot of tries for us, John.
Yeah, well, I guess if you make use of kicks to touch and you execute your line-outs well and you get your maul rolling, then it's 5 points, no matter whether it's a beautiful team try or a pushover. They all count, so why not?
Absolutely, and yeah, lots of young players playing as well. Obviously, Zoe Harrison's still out injured for a while, but it was Amelia McDougall, who's only just sort of signed into the senior team, having come through the development squad, who apparently played very, very well from people that I've spoken to, and she made a couple of touchline conversions as well, which at that level is going to be pretty good. So there's a bit of hope in the number 10 shirt that hopefully we don't miss Holly Aitchison too much. But yeah, anyway, turning to the game that we both were able to sit and watch. Our first victory of the season for Saracens Men, coming against Nottingham, and a match that, let's be honest, we did expect that we were going to win, especially when we saw the team sheet. But there's still a fair bit to take from the game, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even if it's just minutes in the legs and a bit of cohesion and giving chances to players that might not play too much throughout the rest of the season, these games are worthwhile, in my opinion, and you want to see the next generation given a chance, and that's exactly what we saw, and sprinkling of some new players, and yeah, it was a nice afternoon. It was a bit windy at times, but as it always is, the windiest part of the world at the Stonex Stadium. But yeah, mate, when I saw the team on Friday, and I thought, well, you sort of was hoping we'd win by 40 or 50 points, and we pretty much did. And like I say, it's all for me. This cup is all about fitness and preparation, getting ready for Exeter on the 14th of October. And when you got there were some really good performances, I thought. Toby Knight was exceptional after an early knock on when he had a chance to go through. He recovered from that and was great. It must be the hair. Tom Willis looked really good again. It was nice to see Ivan Van Zyl start. He always impresses me. I love watching him play. A couple of nice kicks and touches from Manu Vunipola for the first try for Alex Lewington, and then to start the move from which Ollie Stonham scored. Mate, it was a nice, relaxing afternoon. We saw 73 points scored by our team and can't grumble.
No, I'm definitely with you there, and I think everyone that you mentioned I would have picked out as well was as good performances on the day. I enjoyed Samson Adejimi's cameo off the bench as well. I think he looked pretty sharp. It's almost a shame really that he's got quite a queue ahead of him in the hooker shirt, but the try that he scored, sort of barrelling towards the fullback, you could tell that that their fullback really had no interest in tackling him whatsoever, couldn't you? It was.
With Samson, I mean, last weekend he was wearing shirt number 20, I believe.
Yeah.
So he's another one of these hooker, hot back row, hybrid kind of players. We were talking about Theo Ban in the same circumstances not too long ago. And I tell you what, after that try, maybe he'll end up on the wing at some point as well.
Bold prediction, definitely. I mean, I suppose there's a bit of a queue for him in the back row as well, isn't there? Really, but yeah, there's good performances all round. We brought a few people off the bench as well, a few young players, and like you said, I agree with you. It was a good day out. It was nice to watch a relaxing game of rugby. Really, over 100 points scored on the day. But yeah, we've sort of noticed a little bit of complaining is the wrong word, but some people are saying the performance isn't good enough because we conceded 5 tries. Now, I kind of get what people are saying, but at the end of the day, it's a cup game. It is we're pretty much out of the running for the knockout stages of the cup. You're not going to be playing at full tilt, tackles flying in and looking to do yourself an injury when there are bigger games to come up. And I think that was playing on people's minds a little bit with a couple of the tries that we conceded. And we've also got to give credit to Nottingham. A couple of the tries that they scored from sort of cross-field kicks and things, no one would have defended it. They were very, very well taken tries. And I don't really get the whinging at scoring 70 odd and conceding 29. I really don't get it. What about you, mate?
Yeah, I do understand it. Of course, we'll all rather it was 73-0 and not 73-29. But like first thing to say, as you've already said, is that Nottingham took a couple of their tries really well. That crossfield kick and the dot down where I thought the guy was going to end up in the north stand was unbelievable finish. There was one where the player burst through and run round Gareth Simpson. And listen, if it's a foot race, it doesn't matter what level they're at. Sometimes there are championship players that are quick. It just is what it is. So obviously there's things to work on, but then that's what these games are for. It's a glorified training game, in my opinion. But listen, they're not even produced a match day program for these games. So that kind of never mind. It doesn't really matter. It's filtered through the whole club, as far as I can see. But on a side note, we saw Jackson Ray on Saturday, Charlie and I. And I must say he looked very well, very relaxed. Less bruised than he normally looks, and I hope his career transition is going well. Fair play to him.
Yeah, I missed him. I knew he was there, but I didn't manage to say anything. But yeah, I totally get what you're saying. And, you know, there is the other side of it where, at the end of the day, we have paid to be there. We sort of there is a little bit of an expectation that we're going to see some decent rugby, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. And yeah, I thought it was a pretty good day out there. They put enough on facilities wise. No, it wasn't the best attended match, and it seemed to filter through into the women's game as well. But it is the Prem Cup. I like what they've done with the Prem Cup. I'm glad the championship teams are involved in it, and we've got Hartpury coming up at the Stonex as well, haven't we? And that's probably going to be even less well attended, which is probably a bit of a shame for them. But it adds a little bit of variety to the season, doesn't it? It
does. And if anyone was taking these championship clubs for granted, I mean, match day 1 we lose to Coventry, so there's a little bit more jeopardy in it than we thought there might have been. You see them fixtures and you think, well, we should win all of them, but that's not how it works. And yeah, mate, I think it's good for the championship clubs, probably more so than the Premiership clubs, because after that Coventry game, it was our first Premiership team to lose to a Championship club and all that other nonsense. But it is what it is. It's a developmental competition. And, I remember 19-year-old Noah Atoje captaining us to this cup not so long ago. So the pathway's there and, mate, it serves a purpose. Like I say, I enjoyed Saturday. It was a good day out and it's less stressful. I know that there's going to be fingernails dropped. Well, I know that's disgusting, but I get nervous when it's a proper game, so it's nice to be a bit more chilled on a Saturday afternoon.
No, I totally get that. Like you say, we've enjoyed some thrillers at the Stonex, but I've developed plenty of grey hairs over the last year, and you've lost most of yours. So maybe exactly. Nice to talk about, don't we? Yeah, what can you do? Anyway. That's probably it for the game. There's not a huge amount to bring you from the Nottingham game. It was a good run out. It was a good win. There were some very well taken tries. Defence was regularly optional. It's kind of what you want in a little cup game, isn't it? But cheers, John. Really good to speak to you for a bit. We'll sit back with Jez now and probably listen to him have a big old rant about Eddie Jones, which is strap in, everyone.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
You are listening to the Fezcast, which is proudly sponsored by the Saracens Supporters Association, and I'm Alison Davis, one of the SSA committee. For a £10 annual subscription, the SSA provides our members with monthly newsletters, virtual and in-person player events, away match ticket allocations, and we organise pre-match gatherings at away matches. We sponsor men's and women's players, and we support the Saracens Foundation Track Club on behalf of our members. On top of all that, every year we have a seasonal SSA badge, which is exclusive to members. Where else can you get that much value for a tenner? Join now at membermojo.co.uk/SSA, or come and see us on match day in the Oasis at the Stonex.
This is the Fezcast.
Anyway, before we start up, Matt, did you hear about the Aussie lad who pulled into the hotel car park in France last night? His pickup truck or his hire car, whatever, and it was covered in mud and grass and shrubbery, but loads and loads of blood. And the receptionist comes out and says, Monsieur, what's happened here? And the bloke says, geez, mate, he says, I hit that Eddie Jones on the way back here. The guy says, well, pourquoi? The blood, yeah. He explains it, but the shrubbery. He says, yeah, the bastard tried escaping across the park.
Oh, dear.
Right, back to the show, and welcome back to part 3 of the show. And yeah, I had a little bit of fun there at Eddie Jones's expense. And let's go there. It was the last game of the weekend. And yeah, we're going to talk about the Rugby World Cup, obviously, because there's an awful lot of Saracens players involved and lots of people involved, also coaching wise as well. From with a Saracens background. I mean, you only have to look at the club. It's either Saracens or Wigan Warriors, isn't it? They seem to be a finger in almost every pie out there at some point in their career. But yeah, Eddie Jones, the great overrated one, as I've come to call him, has really been exposed. And I think Barry pointed out, didn't he, on the WhatsApp group where he turned around and said, at what point does Eddie Jones lose his job seekers allowance? Constantly losing games or losing jobs. And yeah, I mean, I put the tweet out there and said, it's amazing to think that it took Eddie Jones 5 years to turn England into a boring, prescriptive, risk-adverse, just bash up the middle, kick possession away team when he's done it to Australia in 6 months. And quite frankly, Australia was shocking against Wales, but Wales were very, very good and made them look shocking. But I mean, Eddie Jones, I'm sorry, I've always said it, and people who listen to the Fezcast over the last 3 or 4 years, we all know that my disrespect to or my rating of Eddie Jones is always been low, and I didn't think it'd get any lower. But to be perfectly honest with you, it couldn't happen to a nicer bloke, could it, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, it would have been the worst thing for us if he went off over to Australia and worked some kind of miracle. But yeah, it's not happened. I mean, to be fair, it's not really fair. But Australian rugby is in pretty dire straits. To be honest, it's not the popular sport that it should be in Australia. There's not the players coming through. They're much more focused on other sports there at the moment. But yeah, I really don't understand Eddie's tactics, to be honest. He's basically treating it like he's building for 2027, which surely you don't take a team to a World Cup entirely with a view on the next World Cup. Surely you look at it, you take it as a free shot. You go, do you know what? We're not expected to win. But I'm not just going to drop legends of the game from my squad and expect young players just to end up straight in the limelight and do well. The likes of Michael Hooper and Quade Cooper are probably sitting at home laughing their asses off because they're not happy to be a part of it.
Absolutely. Well, look, let's just compare 4 coaches who've come into those jobs at international level at a similar time. So Steve Borthwick for England. And there's been lots of criticism of Steve Borthwick, but actually I think his stock is beginning to rise again as a coach with England. You look at Simon Raului at Fiji, you look at Warren Gatland at Wales, and they've done very simple things. They've just taken everything back to basics brought in a lot of experience. Fiji brought in experience that perhaps wasn't there before, but Warren Gatland has looked at players like Wainwright, like Toby Talupe Faletau, Gareth Davis, who was exceptional again last night, George North. He's trusted a lot of experienced players, Dan Bigger, and said, okay, we're going to build around you, and brought some youngsters in with something to prove, but not just completely thrown baby out with the bathwater. England had done the same. You and me would sit here and say, would we have taken Ben Youngs? Probably not. I can now see the reasoning and the rationale behind taking an experienced player like that. More than anything else, that's more building for the next World Cup, because you're not exposing young players like the young lad playing fly half in the first two games for Australia, who then gets hiked off and jettisoned. I mean, his confidence has got to be shot to pieces, and that's not building it up. You're looking to look at a Rafi Quirk and a Van Poortvliet, who would have gone if he hadn't been injured, but it's probably a good injury for him to get, because he's now going to have that 4-year cycle to build into the next World Cup. And England, at the end of the day, could easily get to a final. Certainly a semi-final is there for the taking. I mean, okay, you're going to have to get past Fiji probably, but, it's there for the taking, which 3 weeks ago we were saying England wouldn't get out of the group stages. So, Eddie Jones has come in with this great reputation of being the great coach and everything, and he really hasn't done it at all, and certainly not in comparison with the other three guys I mentioned.
Absolutely not. No, I mean, I'm still gonna be Steve Borthwick's critic, to be honest. The Japan game was one of the worst games of rugby I've watched for England for a long time. I hated sitting watching that, but you're right. It's we feel that we're struggling, and he's just taken the team back to basics, and you build up from that level. If we're sitting here in 2 years' time and it just doesn't seem to be any different, then maybe we're having a slightly different conversation. But yeah, like you say, there's experienced players in the England squad. There's inexperienced players in the England squad. Exactly the same for Wales, and they're leaning on each other. That Welsh team should not be in the position that it's in, really. But it's just the ability of some of those players to dig deep, and for Warren Gatland to dig deep. Look, on another day they would have lost to Fiji, and we're talking about something very different. But there's a lot to be said for taking just a handful of experienced heads, rather than just jettisoning everything and starting again. The way Eddie's got about it, it's almost like he's picking a squad where he can turn around and go, well, look at the squad I had, it was never going to work. And I thought, well, that's a bit unfair on the squad you've picked, mate. Don't get it.
Absolutely. Before we move on from Wales, Australia, though, we do have to mention the one Saracens player in that team who I thought last night. I mean, there were a lot of standout performances from the Welsh. Anscombe was brilliant. Gareth Davis was brilliant. Talupe Faletau, Jack Morgan, all played superbly. Nick Tompkins, though, got to try, but there was one piece of play that absolutely typified Nick's importance to a team, was where there would be, I can't remember which player it was, but one of the forwards had got into contact and got isolated, and Nick saw it, came charging in, and basically held off 3 Australian forwards pretty much on his own at the ruck situation that allowed Wales to recycle the ball. Then suddenly 2-3 phases later, Anscombe's tripping over the top and Nick's got in underneath the posts. And, this is the big thing that I think I said it. The fact that Eddie Jones, when England coach, had the opportunity to pick Nick Tompkins for England and went on record and said he is too small. And Wayne Pivac as well, who the previous Welsh coach, said Nick Tompkins is too small. Well, Nick Tompkins yesterday proved that he might only be 5'9", 5'10", and he might only be 13.5 stone, but he plays 2 to 3 shirt sizes bigger than what he actually is.
He's a strong lad. I've seen it time and time again playing for Saracens, that the players that he flattens, that he has no right to do. To do that, he's always been like that. We've seen it. Mark McCall's seen it, and now Warren Gatland's seen it. Yeah, he's a scrappy player. He knows what his limitations are, probably, but yeah, he really does put himself about. And it is a shame that he's not playing for England. He's like many people, he's been Eddie Jonesed. And yeah, he was fantastic against Australia, and he'll probably be fantastic for the rest of the World Cup for Wales. But they've got a few people to choose from at centre anyway.
Well, they have indeed. But yeah, well done to Nick Tompkins. Now, let's look at the rest of the World Cup. There's a couple of controversial moments that we need to pick up on, and we'll go all the way back to France versus Namibia. A cricket score, again, albeit you've got to take into context that French team, no Marchands, who's injured, no Aldry, who's a bit dodgy at the moment, no Ntamack, who's injured. The rest of that team put 50-odd points on England in the Six Nations. For Namibia to be within 40 points of that slacking that England took is actually testament to how far they've come and how competitive they are.
Yeah.
That French team was full strength for what they could put out. And for 54 minutes with Mathieu Jalibert pulling the strings at fly half, they were imperious. And I don't think on that performance, there's a team in the World Cup, and I'll include Ireland and the box in that, who could have lived with that level of brilliance that they gave. And I mean, Jonathan Dante coming back, great game that came back into against Namibia, showed his importance to France, but they were superb right up until the point that Antoine Dupont took one in the mush, which is an interesting point. But I mean, just talk about the French first of all, Matt. What were your impressions?
Well, yeah, they were fantastic. And, yes, put it in context, that Namibia team, they were always going to beat them. You mentioned it, actually, I should say, you mentioned it a little bit in the first half about the opportunities that teams get from the Championship in domestic level and then Tier 2 or Tier 1.5, Tier 2, Tier 2.5, whatever you want to call it, in international rugby. Namibia spent 4 years playing the other African nations, the vast majority of which they put 100 points on. I think they just have to basically play Zimbabwe and Madagascar, I think it is, that give them a reasonable game. They qualify for every single World Cup, and every 4 years they get beat by New Zealand. Rinse and repeat. What are they supposed to do, really? And yeah, they came up against a France team who are... I think at the moment they are the best team in the world. I mean, we can talk about Ireland in a bit, but I think they are the best team in the world. They played them off the park, not helped by a red card as well. The thing that shocks me about that game is that Dupont was still on the pitch at the time. Quite why a couple of those players didn't come off at half time, I think a really big mistake. Yes, play them, minutes in the legs, show some respect to Namibia as well. And a lot of players do benefit from being out there and not having too much of a break. But I think you do wrap your best players in cotton wool up at that point, and it's proven pretty costly unless he turns up in a Hannibal Lecter mask for the next game.
Well, absolutely. But I mean, this goes back to the point you were making about Namibia playing the standard of rugby that they play in between World Cups. And the fact of the matter is these guys don't get the exposure to the high-intensity rugby. And on 60 minutes, they were knackered. And that tackle... there was no intent in it. It was accidental, but it was born out of the fact that the lad had spent the previous 60 minutes tackle, get up, tackle, get up, tackle. He was knackered. And when you're knackered, you make mistakes. The best players in the world will make mistakes. Yeah. If you're a Namibian farmer, or a student or whatever, you are more likely to make that mistakes. And you're right, absolutely right. There's a huge error on behalf of the French management in putting their player in that position. If they brought on one of the reserve scrum halves and that happened to them, well, it would have been a shame for that player, but you're not going to miss him. The chances are now, potentially, Dupont is going to be playing with an injury that people may well target, because why wouldn't you? He's the best player in the world and you want to put him off his game. Or he's going to do himself some serious damage, further damage. And I know I played with a fractured cheekbone before. I mean, Brad Barrett did it. He had, a week out where he had a plate put in and everything like that and came back and played. But then, Brad bless his cotton socks, he's never going to go into the movies after his career ended, was he? So, not unless he was playing a villain or something. But yeah, I mean, it was a ridiculous decision all the way around. But it also, whilst World Rugby will not support these lower nations and giving them more intense rugby to play in between World Cups, then you're going to get these situations occur.
Absolutely, yeah. It's where I saw an argument the other day, and I at first I went, that's absolutely ridiculous, and then thought about it and thought there was a lot of reasoning behind it. For once a team gets 60, 70 points ahead, you end the game. And, it's kids' games that do that, and it does rile people up if it's suggested. But actually, how many times do you see a match be that one-sided, and there's either a red card or a serious injury, and not through any kind of deliberate malice or anything? I mean, yes, there will be some frustration involved as well, but quite often, like you say, it is down to a team who've just been absolutely pasted for an hour. They're knackered, so the technique goes, and they're a little bit lazy, or they're a bit slow to react, and they cause an injury. So I don't know that you want to see that in a World Cup, but it's definitely food for thought.
Absolutely, something's got to be done, and I think there's, we could spend an entire show on this, or we could go on one of the big podcasts and give our ideas out, and I'll put my ideas out there. But let's get back to the games. Italy, big result for them. This is the interesting one for the next rounds: Italy versus New Zealand, because New Zealand don't have that aura of invincibility any longer. Italy have really improved, got some really good players. Kieran Crowley knows New Zealand inside out. I'm not saying there is going to be a surprise there, but if there is a surprise there, it wouldn't shock me as much as it would have done 4 or 8 years ago, Matt.
No, I'm with you as well. But we do, even under Kieran Crowley, we do see Italy. The game can be over in 10 or 15 minutes sometimes. But equally, they have shown over the last few years that they will go toe to toe with teams, and not just the sort of the wins of old that they had, which was just physical grunt up front, score a lot of penalties, and just about get over the line. They've got a lot of talent in their backs as well, and they could cause a shock. I think they're actually a little bit unlucky to be in the group that they're in. But like you say, yeah, it's not something that would surprise me a lot. But I mean, given the fact that New Zealand have already lost to France, they're not a team that loses twice in a World Cup, or certainly not in a World Cup group stage. And having said that, I'll speak to you next week.
Well, absolutely. I mean, we'll wait and see. I'm looking forward to that game quite a lot. Let's move forward, though, on to Saturday, and 2 big games on Saturday. We'll do it in order. We'll do England first, I think, and we'll obviously spend a lot of time and attention on that one. And there's some key Saracens involvement there. Number one, we talk about intensity. We talk about smaller nations coming up against teams. Chile for 20 minutes made England work very, very hard. Now, there's 2 things happen there. One, Chile have proved themselves to be a very good side. Their players they're not fully professional, but they've been allowed time to be professional, as it were, in the build-up to this World Cup, which has obviously paid dividends. You've also got the aspect that there were a few players, Owen Farrell being the prime one, who hasn't played for 4 games due to a suspension, coming back into it, finding his feet. You got Marcus Smith starting for the first time at fullback. He took a little while to get into the flow of what he was meant to be doing. First 20 minutes, I thought, oh, here we go. He's trying to win this game on his own. But then he worked out what he needed to do. And when it clicked, England looked very, very good. The last hour, that was as good as I've seen England play for 4 seasons almost.
Yeah. I mean, we're always going to add the caveat that it was just Chile. It is unfair, but it is right. And, we don't learn a huge amount from these games, the same as the Saracens Nottingham game. We don't learn a lot from them unless you lose them. But yeah, like you say, it showed that there is actually there's actually some talent in the England team to do something reasonably exciting. And yeah, I like the experiment. I like Smith at 15. We talked about it last week and the week before. Poo-pooed it a little bit, I think, but you know, for him to come on at 15 in the last 20 minutes of a game and do what he did in the second half of the Chile game, I think would be fantastic. Really, it's a great option to have. We did have a joke, a few of us, and say we should just go the whole hog. We should have Ford, Farrell, Smith. I mean, we weren't far away from this, but Ford, Farrell, Smith. You stick Daly out there. You stick Malins out there as well. You've got a playmaker in every single position, and you just play roulette to see who's playing where. Why not? Just go with that. Sod your two Ilagis and that lot. But I don't know.
It's an interesting point made, Aaron. I mean, I actually made the point on Twitter about this as well, and I've said it to a number of people. The first things first is quite interesting because we've seen Danny Cipriani opening his gob again, blaming everybody but himself for the fact that he was a feckless, lazy, believed his own publicity and never made. He was a great talent but never made the most of it. And, I've often suggested that Marcus Smith has the potential to be Cipriani 2.0. What I think Marcus Smith has done is proven that he isn't that he will knuckle down and he just wants to play rugby for England, which you can only applaud. And that way, what he will do is he will be a team man. Now, this might sound weird, but, the Springboks have taken an awful lot of grief, particularly from Matt Williams, who really should shut up because he's a failed coach and he's an even worse pundit. But, this whole 7-1 split on the bench is immoral enough. No, it's not. It's just using your strengths to the best of your ability. The Springboks put 7-1 against Ireland. It didn't really come off. The bomb squad didn't come off. England, though, are in an even better position than the Springboks to go 7-1 if they wanted to. And if we play the Springboks at any point, I would be seriously tempted to do this. And again, yes, it's a risk. But Marcus Smith potentially covers you 9, 10, 13, 11, 14 and 15. Okay? I don't say 12 because I don't think his defence is good enough for 12. But if you've got Owen Farrell on the pitch and your inside centre goes down, you put Smith in at 10, you move Faz out to 12. Or you've got Ben Earl on the pitch somewhere or on the bench. He goes in and slots in at 12 if you need him to. So you could do that. I'm not saying they will, but I mean, the temptation must be there. And I think that's what it'd be. He's got the pace to be on the wing, both wings. He can do that. He's got the ability at 13 to play like Elliot Daly does at 13. That's a potential going forward, I think. Potential. If you really wanted to throw the roulette wheel out there and just go full in and bet the house on it.
Well, I mean, we'll talk about South Africa in a minute, but yeah, like you say, when you play them, you do need to go toe to toe with them. I think there's no way of sort of beating them at a different game. So yeah, why not? So, I think if we do end up getting that far into the tournament, none of us expected to, and you think, yeah, why not try something out? Definitely, but. Yeah, I mean, from the England Chile game, there's a lot to talk about. I mean, there's still plenty of Owen Farrell bashing. You can't get away from that. I don't think he did anything wrong necessarily, but everyone seems to be shocked that George Ford came on with 20-25 minutes to go, and all of a sudden the tempo went up. But that's because it's the last 20-25 minutes against Chile. I think I could come on and bring the tempo up against them a little bit. The same as I probably could have scored a hat trick if I was standing in Henry Arundel's position, but I'm bigging myself up a bit too much there.
Well, I mean, Owen Farrell, number one, defence was superb. The organisation of defence was superb. England didn't fall off tackles. Yeah, okay, it's Chile. So what? You beat what's in front of you. That's what was in front of you. You play against that. Once he got to the level of the game and the rustiness had come out of him, and it didn't take him a great deal of time, the distribution from Farrell, the change in how he did it, whether he was going to be kicking or whether he's going to be passing or whether he was going to be making the run or someone was popping off of him or whatever, it was superb. And Farrell is a captain, simple as. And, that's what England needed and that's what England got. He plays against Samoa at 10. This is going to be terribly hard on George Ford, who's had one really, really good game. But his really, really good game was limited to one style of play. And, if Argentina had actually bothered to turn up on that day, it could well have been very, very different. Owen Farrell is the best 10 in England, best 10 in the Northern Hemisphere, potentially he's up there with the Jalaberts and the Entamacs and the Johnny Sextons. And yeah, he's taken an awful lot of grief that is completely and utterly undeserved.
He has. I mean, I'm tempted to go Ford Farrell 10-12, but we'll see.
Absolutely. Quick mention for players. I mean, Ben Earl came on, did brilliantly. Billy Vunipola again, been taking a bit of grief again. I thought he had a pretty decent game. He's not got the pace he had 4 years ago. We know that, but he does other things now in a number 8 shirt, and I think he's done pretty well. Theo Dan really did impress me. For a young lad who's come from nowhere, 12 months ago, there's not a single person outside of Northwest, whatever our postcode is, who would even know who Theo Dan was. He has a chat to me on the Fezcast before the final last year, and suddenly, he's up there, top echelons in many people's team of the week from the press and everything. So it's all thanks to me. I'm taking that one.
Yeah, nothing to say to
that. Well, look, we've done England, we've done our Saracens players there. Let's have a quick look at it, Ireland, South Africa, and we have touched on it a little bit. The South African bomb squad. I'm going to say one thing now. I think Rassie Erasmus, for all of his irascibleness and the fact that as a person, I kind of put him somewhere around about on Eddie Jones, just a bit below Eddie Jones level. I think he is an innovator. Him and Jackson Oba, they have innovated, they have done things. One thing I don't like is this light system. They have taken all of the responsibility, all of the free thinking, all of the play what's in front of you away from their team. And late on when they're, we're telling Faf de Klerk to take pots from miles out, the Irish line out wasn't functioning as well as it should have done. They should have kicked to the corner, and that's them just almost playing rugby by numbers. And I think someone needs to sit down with them in their organisation and say, look, we need to give some responsibility back to those players on the field. Whether those players on the field are now so attuned to taking instruction from the light system, the ambers, the greens, the reds, I don't know, and whether they can do. But against a team that plays at the same level as them, like Ireland, who do think on their feet and who do get the crack of the whips, particularly at ruck time, because they never get penalised. And Josh van der Fleer is a walking penalty. He just seems to have a cloak of invisibility about him. They will come undone against Ireland, against France, I think, who play a bit more intuitively, shall we say.
Yeah, I think that system must make some of the South not doubt their abilities, but make some of the South African players sort of question their instinct a little bit. And I think, we definitely saw that in that game. But you got to credit Ireland. They knew exactly what they were going to come up against. It was a ferocious game. It shows that a low-scoring game can actually be quite entertaining as well. Fair play. It was a good game of rugby, can't argue.
It was, and actually the interesting point, I think it was Sonia McLaughlin who made it first, I think, on Twitter, but a number of people have picked up on it as well. It's to talk about the intensity and the amount of hits, and there was not one yellow card, not one red card, not even one contentious TMO, do you want to have a look at that ref situation? Every tackle from both sides was low, it was hard, but it was fair. And, when you see like the Scotland game with the Tonga guy and everything, and I do question why that wasn't a red, although I can see Jamie Ritchie as a player who goes in with absolutely no self-regard for his own safety, and he leads with his head. I don't know whether he is looking for that head contact or not, but it happens to him quite a lot. And it will curtail his career and potentially, have an impact on the rest of his life if he doesn't stop going in and headbutting shoulders and everything. But it was a red card and they missed that one. They got that one completely wrong. Tom Curry must be sat there thinking, Jesus, mate, am I the only one who's getting done properly on this?
No, I'm with you. I think the sort of justification they had for it in isolation, I'd go, do you know what? Okay, fair enough. But it's the consistency of everything that's going on. Like I say, Jamie Ritchie, you could, having analysed it in that in the back of a van or wherever it is that they've got the TMO, and sort of minutely gone into it. Yeah, he dips a little bit and he leads with his head. So there's mitigation for the Tonga player, and we wouldn't get that with a normal TMO process. We get that because they take the pressure off and they do it over the course of 8 minutes. And so I do like that review system. And I think what it might actually do is lead to more things that we think are red cards actually staying as a yellow because of some pretty detailed mitigation. But yeah, like you say, if I was Tom Curry, I'd be going, well, hold on a second, that didn't really apply to me. But it's a new system and it may well work itself out.
Well, indeed, and I think, again, that's another part of rugby that's been taking a lot of criticism, the fact that the referees don't seem to be given, that they've got an out, that they don't have to make the decision, as it were. But they do, and it's just using what they've got in front of them. And actually, the top referees, and I think Carl Dixon had a good game where he refereed, a couple of conscientious ones. Matt Carley came back with a good refereeing performance, I thought. Jaco Piper was very good. Wayne Barnes, as ever, exemplary in his refereeing performance. The big decisions on the field that they can make, they do make. But if they've got the opportunity to go to a bunker and just have it ratified, it doesn't take anything out of the game. Why not do it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so the last game we've got to review is Scotland versus Tonga, which was a bit of a curate's egg, really. I mean, Scotland, on the face of it, looked very comfortable, and in attack, there had some sparkling moments sparked by Finn Russell, who is a mercurial talent. Duhan van der Merwe, when he gets going, I mean, you'd need a bazooka to stop him. I mean, very reminiscent of Jonah Luma in his pomp, just with a bit more of a sidestep, I suppose. But yeah, Darcy Graham again. I will say George Horn, someone's going to snout him at some point, isn't he? He's probably going to be a referee as well, I think. He's going to snout him as well. I think Wayne Barnes came very close to it at one point. I mean, Jesus, the typical small Scotsman, he just needs a ginger hairdo and he's got it all. Yeah, small, Scottish, ginger hair, doesn't know when he's beaten, doesn't know when to shut up. I mean, that was the thing. But yeah, I think Scotland did enough. I think they would have wanted a bit more from the game and certainly would have appreciated that red card being the red card as we think it would have been, because then that would make things very interesting going forward. South Africa are going to play Tonga next weekend, and that's it. Then everything's out of their hands. Now, Scotland are playing Romania, aren't they, on the weekend? Imagine Scotland putting out a cricket score against Romania. It could easily happen. And you're suddenly looking at both them and South Africa. South Africa, the best they can do, I think, is get 15 points, isn't it?
I think.
Yeah. Scotland are on 5 points now. I mean, they're going to kick themselves for that performance against South Africa, because if they got even a losing bonus point out of it, they would be in a very good position. But if they get a bonus point win against Ireland, and let's be honest about it, all Ireland need to do is get a bonus point to guarantee themselves. So a losing bonus point, or not a losing bonus point, a bonus point for scoring 4 tries, but Scotland putting 80 points on them, could make things very, very interesting. And I'm not saying there's going to be a conspiracy amongst the Gaelic Celtic nations here, but, I mean, stranger things have happened in the world of international sporting tournaments.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're Ireland, are you looking at South Africa as a potential opponent in the final and going, no, we don't want that, and helping them out? But I hope it doesn't happen. It's been weird. A couple of my mates are from Scotland, and they're sort of quite down, really, because they kind of felt that the way the group was drawn, they played one game and then had a rest, and a couple of teams had played 3 games, and they're looking at it and saying, well, we've played one match and we're already out of the tournament.
Yeah, that's possibly the most Scottish thing ever.
Yeah, and it's a bit sad, really, because it's probably the best Scotland side we've seen for a long time, and they've been shafted with the group that they're in. But yeah,
I'm gonna pick you up on that one, because and I replied to Andy Nicol, and he hasn't said anything actually on Twitter where he talks about how the fact you got the second, the first, third, and fifth ranked teams at this moment in the same group. Well, everybody knows how the Rugby World Cup is drawn. It might be complete and utter codswallop the way it's drawn, but they all knew. And they all knew that you had to be in a good position 3 years ago. So just play better 3 years ago, and you'd have been in the top 4 or 5, and you wouldn't have been drawn with Ireland and, England's for everything. They got to a World Cup final in 2019. The best thing Eddie did for us was do that, and then we suddenly find ourselves in a group that we could get out of reasonably safely, as it were. And that's about the only thing he did do for England rugby. But the other teams, you have the opportunity. You know when it's going to be drawn. You know how it's going to be drawn. It's not just a case of you have to peak for this point. You have to qualify correctly, and it's no different in football. It's no good, if you're England qualifying for the next Football World Cup. There's no point being crap at the moment if you can't get out of your group. Italy have found that in recent years in the football. You have to be playing at a consistently high level the whole cycle. Gone are the days of going to a World Cup and then having a year off and rebuilding. You've got to keep that intensity going at the very highest level, the whole cycle.
Now, there's a reason they're changing the way or the timing of doing the draw for the next time round. It is a bit silly that they're drawing it out 3 years in advance, but hey ho. Back to the game. Scotland did what they needed to do. They had to do what most other teams have done against a lesser but still good opponent, and that's ride out that first 20-30 minutes where they go hammer and tong at you, and then sort of move through the gears a little bit, and you did kind of see it with for Tonga's captain scoring their try. Finn Russell just waved him through. Was not interested in tackling him. He's been stepped by a 20-something stone prop. But you can tell us, okay, fair enough. You score that try, we're going to score 5 more later on. I'm not getting injured. I've got bigger things to do. Maybe. But yeah, Scotland have done what they needed to do, and it does just, they've got I don't think it really matters how many points they put on Romania. They have to beat Romania with 5. They have to beat Ireland to get 5. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, I've enjoyed the World Cup so far. We're at the halfway point now. 24 out of the 48 matches played. It's been excellent. We just need to do a quick preview of what's coming up this weekend, and we got hardly wins in the Cup. Bit of a derby. So, did you see enough on the weekend, Matt, to say that our team, shorn of its superstars, will be good against Quinn's shorn of their superstars?
Yeah, there was enough to go on. We always have a bit of a slow build up into the season, don't we? But at the end of the day, we're not doing too well in the Cup. But there's a bigger picture to it. So I think regardless of the result, hopefully it's a game that gives us something to go on for a few weeks' time for when we face Exeter. Really.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that's obviously the main objective going forward in the short term, and yeah, looks like we're taking steps in the right direction. Matt, thank you for your time this evening, and thank you also to John for his input, talking about the games just gone off at StoneX. Brilliant stuff from him. We're going to be back first week of October now. It's October, it means York Marathon's getting closer and closer for me. And I've got, hopefully by next week, I'll have news of a very special auction item that I'm going to be auctioning off the Motor Neuro, thanks to one of the rugby fraternity. So I'll wait for that to come through, but hopefully we'll be able to talk about that next week and then tell you all how you can get involved in that. But other than that, thanks Matt, thanks John, thanks everybody for listening in to the Fezcast. We're back next Wednesday on the 4th of October. With hopefully a win over Hardly Wins to talk about, and nothing to talk about with England in the rugby because we've got the weekend off.
This is the Fezcast.